Good morning. Today on Spotlight, Dr. Antoine Garibaldi, president of the University of Detroit Mercy. What's the latest news coming out of his academic institution, and what impact is the university having on Southeast Michigan? We'll talk about that. And later, Dawood Walid, executive director of the Michigan chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, better known as CARE, will be here to address what many believe is a rise in Islamophobia. It's Sunday, March the 24th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Dr. Antoine M. Garibaldi. What does the M stand for?
Michael.
Michael, okay, you know I've known you all this time and I never did know
Michael,
that.
Yeah.
All right. Welcome to Spotlight. You've got a lot going on there at the University of Detroit Mercy. Number one, the capital campaign reached $100 million a year early.
Yes.
Not bad. Do you stop there?
No way. No way. It's going to
Keep going.
December 2019, and we have a number of our alumni who said that we are very definitely going to make a contribution to the university. And we've had many major gifts. 6 of our alumni have contributed more than $2 million and more than 25 $1 million gifts. So 75% of our gifts in this campaign have come from alumni primarily, and that is really the first time that we have ever achieved that kind of a goal.
Very first time.
Very first time, right.
That says a lot about your leadership. It also says a lot about the university to be able to get to that goal and to get there a year early. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I attribute to the enthusiasm that people have for the university. Many of our alumni have reached that point in their career that they've been very, very successful. They attribute a lot of that to the education that we received to the university, from the university, and also from the values that were inculcated into them. And so now they want to give back and they want to help the university out. And they're extremely excited about our involvement in the city, and they see many of these young people who are choosing University of Detroit Mercy while they have many, many choices today.
You outlined some goals that would go along with that $100 million if you could reach it. You've obviously reached it. Break that down. What is the $100 million going towards?
$40 million are going to scholarships. $25 million are going to faculty and academic programs. Another $25 million has been set aside for facilities, and that's an area where we need to do a little bit more in terms of giving. And then $10 million for kind of general all-purpose uses. So from time to time we have had some opportunities, like we're creating a veterans lounge. We have lots of individuals who are coming to the university who are veterans, and we want to make sure that they have a lounge and are very, very comfortable when they're at the university in between their classes and the like.
I think I saw on your website that 92% of the students receive some form of financial aid. So
that's right.
That's an important part of this.
Extremely. First generation students. We have over a third of our students are first generation college students.
Okay.
So when we make the case to our alumni that the scholarships that you give, and particularly the endowed scholarships, and we've raised over 100 different endowed scholarships since this campaign started, we know and they know that this is going to students who were just like them when they went to college. Mm-hmm. They did not have a lot of money. The Jesuits, the Sisters of Mercy, took good care of them.
Looking for their first opportunity.
Looking for their first opportunity, and they've gone on. So we're very proud of the fact that we have a very, very high first generation number of our students, but we've also done an exceptional job with respect to retention, and we've averaged about 85% of our first year students returning as sophomores over the last few years.
Doctor, another big piece of news that has come out of your organization recently was the fact that you've realigned the tuition for some of the graduate programs. Now, what does the word realign mean?
So realigned, and you're really good, because some people think it's reduced. And
yeah.
Last year, you might recall, we reset our tuition from $41,000 for undergraduate students from $20,000 to $28,000. That was really the result of a lot of good research that we did. And we also asked parents and also prospective students.
And you got a lot of good publicity from
that. We did. And in fact, it's already shown in terms of the number of applications that we have. We have over 6,000 applications for next year's freshman class. So we're really expecting some really positive things. But just like we reset the tuition at the undergraduate level, it has made it much more affordable for a student to think about a private education at a Catholic university like ours. in the same way that individuals who are already in the workforce, who are thinking about a master's degree in engineering, in business, or in architecture, and even in health professions. So we readjusted that so that we're more competitive with not just our local institutions, but also other institutions that some of these individuals who are in the workforce would think about. So our MBA program, for example, it's ranked in the top 20 nationally in U.S. News and World Report. We have individuals who love to take those classes, and so rather than $1,500, we've adjusted it to $789. And we know that that makes a very, very big difference. Our intention is that we would make it up on volume.
All of this I know fits into this big thing that you've been involved in and many others, and that is trying to create more talent in this region. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, I want you to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, great.
We'll be right back with Dr. Antoine Garibaldi, President of the University of Detroit Mercy. Stay with us. He is, I believe, the 25th president of the University of Detroit Mercy, and he's one of our guests today on Spotlight. Talent, especially in the skilled trades or professions that are closely aligned with that, that's what everybody's talking about now. And they say that there's a shortage in Southeast Michigan.
That's right, and one of the things that we have certainly realized over the last few years is we receive a lot of students who are coming from the community colleges. Some are going to community colleges because of the cost of the education, others because they're not quite sure about where they want to major in. The majority of our degrees are at the undergraduate level, bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, but there are individuals who also want to specialize in a whole variety of fields. So we have really been working on getting more of our students to the city of Detroit to take courses in a whole variety of areas, whether it's an undergraduate degree or a person is changing careers. In our School of Architecture, for example, we have a Master of Community Development program, which has been around for about 12 years. Well, many of those individuals have come out of the corporate world, they've come out of also government, and they want to do a little bit more with nonprofits. They want to work along with organizations that are working to place those individuals in those skilled and technical trades. I think that there is a place for everyone. One of the things that the governor's been talking about is something that we know very, very real, is that there are a small number of individuals in our state who have bachelor's degrees. In fact, less than 20%. But we have,
and we aren't graduating as many from high school as we have in the past.
Exactly. So we put the emphasis on making sure that we graduate students from high school, but also giving students that whole array of choices, whether they want a 2-year degree, whether they want to specialize in a technical area, or whether they want an undergraduate degree and maybe go on to a graduate degree. Those options are all on the table. And that's one of the things that, that we have been really focusing in on as we work along with students. We're very proud that we've had an Upward Bound program for the last year, and we're working with Martin Luther King School in Frederick Douglass, for example, with young African-American males in those schools.
A good barometer of an academic institution's health is how it's doing with its endowment. How's U of D's endowment?
Well, I'm very pleased to say that we are at $60 million in our endowment. When I started the university in 2011, we had an endowment of $25 million. Big jump, and clearly a lot of that has been direct contributions in our campaign for those kinds of purposes, and then also some of it has been because of some of the rising investment rates. But the fact of the matter is, we always want to have a higher endowment, because that is what makes it possible for so many of those students who come to us and don't have any kind of form of financial aid, and we can use some of the endowment, the 5% interest on that on an annual basis in order to support their education.
You have the campus on McNichols, but you also have the Corktown campus, which is the dentistry school,
right,
and then of course the Riverfront campus, which is the law school.
Right.
Any more expansion coming down the line, do you foresee?
If there's any more expansion,
because that's part of the battle between higher education institutions now.
Right.
Is we have our main campus, but we want to spread ourselves out everywhere.
Right. Well, I believe that we are fine the way that we are on our McNichols campus. We have added some buildings. We have added an annex to our health professions program, for example, a few years ago. It was a $3 million project that allowed us to expand our physician assistant program, which is one of the top rated ones in the nation. And that is a field that many young people are thinking about, and I shouldn't say young people, but also individuals who are already in the field of healthcare are looking to specialize in, because there are not enough physicians to go around today. And so the job of a physician assistant is really to aid the MD or the DO in the profession in a great deal. So we have some opportunities there. We'd like to expand our student union, which is one of our goals in the campaign still. And then there are a couple of other buildings that we know that we can add on to them and still be able to provide the same quality education in small classes to many of our students.
Two final questions. The Fitzgerald neighborhood, which you're a key part of, you're one of the main anchors there. Update us on that. How's that going?
So Live 6 Alliance has been going very, very well. We're very thankful to the Kresge Foundation for a lot of their early support and their continued support in that. The university contributes to that too. We are expecting to open our home base later this spring. That will be the building on McNichols, which will be the center of our Detroit Collaborative Design Center, Live 6 Alliance, a representative from the City Planning Office, and then also representatives for the Fitz Forward project that are working on the Fitzgerald neighborhood.
Our director, Rob Kemp, is a real sports fan, and if I let you get out of here without talking about Antoine Davis, who just broke Steph Curry's record, I would probably be in big trouble. Talk a little bit about this young man who's coached by his father. His father is the basketball coach. Phenomenal year.
Right, and his big brother is also a member of the coaching team. Well, everybody knows Mike Davis and his past accomplishments at Indiana and also UAB and also at Texas Southern, but Antoine is one of those diamonds in the rough that we did not know we were getting when we hired Coach Davis. And he was originally expected to go and play with Houston, which has done very, very well. Antoine is a great young man. Yes, he hit over 130 threes in his freshman year, and he was double teamed for practically the majority of them. We're going to have a very exciting year next year, and Coach has 6 places to fill, and I know a couple of the folks who are going to be joining it, and it's great for him to bring that kind of excitement. And he's not that overwhelming player, but the fact that he was rated by Sports Illustrated as number 36 out of 50 of the top players in college basketball this year.
And so the young people who you see on the courts, different neighborhoods, think you can just put it up through that net. His discipline and practice, I understand, are incredible. I heard his father say that one day he shot 10,000 times.
Right. Well, that's why when you see him shoot,
I can't imagine what my arm would be like if I tried 10,000 shots in one day.
Yeah. Well, it's all about perfection, and it's you develop a technique. And I used to have a jump shot. I don't get to practice it nearly as much anymore. But you have a technique, and you develop that. And he's very, very disciplined about it. And he's an excellent student too.
Dr. Garibaldi, thanks so much for coming in and bringing us up to date, and we'll stay in touch with you.
Thanks so much, Chuck.
And we'll be back in just a second. We'll be joined by Dawood Walid. He's the Executive Director of CARE, and he'll be talking about something a lot of people are talking about these days, Islamophobia. Stay with us. And welcome back to Spotlight. Joining me now is Dawood Walid. He is Executive Director of CARE, the Michigan chapter. It's a pleasure having him. And he's just the beginning of a conversation I'm going to be having over the next few weeks with leaders of various communities throughout our region about what many are calling America at the crossroads. Thanks for joining us today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Chuck.
We keep hearing the word Islamophobia. Let me read you a couple things, and then I just want to get your take because you're on the ground with it day to day.
Yes, sir.
One definition that I saw was Islamophobia is the fear, hatred of, or prejudice against the Islamic religion or Muslims generally, especially when seen as a geopolitical force or the source of terrorism. In the Guardian newspaper over in the UK, not too long ago, they said that they came up with the definition of Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. And then I know, Keir, you have probably your own definition. How do we get a handle on just what is Islamophobia?
That's a good question, Chuck. Well, as Muslims are not a racial group in the United States of America, we're very diverse. So white Americans, black Americans, Arab Americans, South Asians. Islamophobia is a type of racism in the United States of America, meaning that Muslims are portrayed and looked at in American society as a non-white identity within the de facto racial hierarchy of the American society. And really much of Islamophobia doesn't have to do with not understanding Islamic theology. It is more so xenophobia and racism that is perpetrated, or Muslims and Islam are framed as something non-American, something foreign, thus a threat to the American society.
Are hate crimes indeed on the rise, or is that just sort of a stereotype that's sort of gotten out of hand and maybe it's not any worse now than it was 5-10 years ago?
Well, hate crimes are up according to the Department of Justice statistics the last 2 years, as well as our organization tracks these things, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and other organizations track it. And hate crimes against Muslims, hate crimes against African Americans, be they Muslim or non-Muslim, Latinos against Jewish Americans, they've all been on the rise in the last couple of years. And unfortunately, I know many of my friends on the right don't want to admit this, but since the inauguration of President Donald J. Trump, hate crimes have been up on the rise in the United States of America, and I think it is because the political rhetoric has given the green light for the bigotry that people had inside of themselves and perhaps hid more against Muslims, against Sikhs, against Jewish people. Now people feel like they have the license to be openly Islamophobic, openly anti-Semitic, openly anti-Sikh.
So it's your opinion, and correct me if I'm right or wrong, that words from leaders, whether it's the president or it's leaders in other realms of our society, words make a difference.
Words matter, Chuck, and this is why I believe that people, not only in the political arena, but also civic leaders, religious leaders, we have to be more cautious with our words, because we know that these words have impact. And so we need to shift it and have positive words and talk more about inclusion, about our common humanity, and to speak out very vigorously against all forms of bigotry, be it anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-black racism, because then otherwise we just allow these types of things to fester in our society, and God forbid, we don't want an attack like what happened in New Zealand to hit here. We've already had the Pittsburgh Synagogue Tree of Life massacre, the Oak Creek massacre against the Sikh temple, the massacre against the black church in Charleston, South Carolina. We don't want what's been taking place, the Quebec mosque massacre, right? We don't want any more of these things to take place.
Yeah, we'll be right back with Dawood Waleed. Stay with us. What are the top forms of abuse?
A large percentage of the discrimination complaints that come into our office relate to law enforcement and corrections. So for instance,
harassment, because I noticed harassment
yes.
was top.
Yeah, harassment.
And then followed by Customs and Border
yes.
Protection. So this obviously means, and one thing that was talked about at that luncheon quite a bit was the number of people that get examined, pulled over when you're trying to catch a flight to go somewhere. That has become almost routine for members of the Arab American and Muslim community.
Yes, mainstay. So TSA, which is part of Homeland Security but not part of Customs Border Protection, there's a TSA harassment that Muslims face flying domestically. Okay, then when there's international flights and re-entry, as well as driving across the border, then that's CBP. And we have a number of complaints. We actually have a lawsuit right now that is in federal court relating to CBP of Muslims coming back into the country, driving back across the Ambassador Bridge.
For people who don't know what CBP is.
CBP is Customs Border Protection.
Okay.
People driving back to the country who have been asked questions such as, Do you pray? How many times a day do you pray? Which mosque do you attend? Who is your religious leader? So these types of questions is somewhat treating religious practice as some sort of national security threat or a predicate for some sort of criminal activity, which is really against the First Amendment of the Constitution of these United States of America. And unfortunately, Muslims have been subjected to this and continue to be subjected to this by Customs Border Patrol, Customs Border Protection, re-entering into the United States of America.
Okay, now.
And we're talking about citizens, by the way.
Absolutely. Now, there are certainly people watching this program who are going to say, well, that needs to be done because of national security, and we have to make America and our borders secure, especially with all the immigration stuff that's going on, in order to protect the citizens. Your response, and I know you hear that all the time.
Oh, of course, and these are citizens of the United States of America. These aren't people who are foreign nationals entering into the United States of America. But if we looked at crime data and went by that logic, I know that's not your argument, but the #1 demographic of people who commit mass shootings in the United States of America and political violence or domestic terrorism, these would be white males who claim the Christian faith. So then we don't have this type of racial profiling for white men driving back across the border. If we were going to use empirical data and crime statistics as a predicate of who would be questioned.
If America, I mean all of America, doesn't get a handle on this, what's your fear?
That there are white supremacists, there are neo-Nazis who are trying to stir up a race war based upon hardening economic conditions. This is what they're openly calling for right now. The New Zealand shooter who referenced common ground and white identity, and he looked towards Donald Trump as being a symbolic leader. He mentioned this in his manifesto that he's looking for and thinks that there's going to be a race war. This is what white supremacists are called for. And if we don't get a handle on the division in our country between right and left, between those people who are trying to stir up fear amongst the white population against Latinos, against Muslims, against other groups, that I'm fearful that there are going to be some people who in the spirit of vigilantism are going to go around and start mass attacking certain demographic groups. And I'm really worried about the Muslim community as well as Sikhs, Jewish community, and other communities who are vulnerable to the rising overtness of white supremacy in the American society. I'm really worried about it.
All right, we certainly hope that does not happen, but appreciate you sharing your very honest feelings about what could happen in America. Dawood Raouli, thank you so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure talking with you. And as I said, we will be having this conversation with other leaders throughout our community. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the spotlight. We hope you have a great week.